Hi guys, my name is Emily. Welcome to my spoilery thoughts on The Wastelands by Stephen King. This is part of the hashtag DT Project 17, a reading project in which I read the Dark Tower series for the first time. So 2 disclaimers. 1, if I'm saying something that doesn't make sense to you, having read the whole series, I haven't read the whole series, and that is why I am recording my thoughts as I read the series for the first time, just for fun, and I'm sharing them with you guys, so be kind. And 2 is I don't care about authorial intentions. I am approaching this series in terms of my own research interests. So I am interested in fantasy literature, I'm interested in children's literature, and I'm interested to see how this series, a series that I'm starting to struggle with its genre, fits into fantasy, if it even does. If you watched my review before this, I did talk about genre and how I was having difficulties fitting it into a specific place, and that might be worth going back to. I included it in the review portion just because it was spoiler free, and it's not a spoilery thing to talk about genre really, so I've done that there. But here I wanted to talk about the return of Jake and what that means and what that does for me, and I have some thoughts. So let me talk a little bit about Peter Pan. So stay with me a minute. I watched Jen Campbell's Peter Pan analysis video. I would highly recommend that you pause this video and watch Jen's video talking about Peter Pan, because I'm going to kind of attempt to summarize this one aspect that I think sort of carries between the two. But Jen is a wonderful human and an incredibly smart human, and she does amazing videos on YouTube. And I know that a lot of people watching these Dark Tower videos are maybe not a part of the booktube community. Jen is a pretty big figure in the booktube community, but if you're kind of coming at this tangentially, you maybe haven't encountered her before, so I will link her and I would encourage you to check her out. So, Peter Pan, one aspect that I want to draw on is Peter Pan being the childish facet of Wendy. So one of the things that Jen talked about is how when J.M. Barrie wrote the play, he specifically asked that Peter Pan be played by a girl, which continues to be a tradition in theater, that Peter Pan is played by a girl. The argument being that Wendy, who is female, then meets this facet of her personality, who is Peter, who is played by a girl. So we kind of see, I guess, a mirroring or a foil. So what could happen to Wendy? It's like she could be this childish person, she could grow up, because her father is wanting her to grow up. We have the childish side of Wendy, Peter Pan, draw her out of the primary world, contemporary London at the time, and into Neverland, a place out of time, a place where Peter Pan never grows up, nobody ever grows up there, there isn't aging. We see a similar thing happening with Jake. Roland draws Jake out of the primary world, the contemporary world, into Roland's world, mid-world, which time has moved on. Time is out of sync. Time doesn't really matter anymore. Like, people are living for hundreds of years because it seems like time is all out of whack. So we have a space where time means nothing as well. Now, Peter Pan is a sort of fantastic piece of children's literature, and I don't mean that it's good. I mean, it is good, but when I say fantastic, I mean it's part of the fantasy genre, so it's fantastic literature. Just because when I say fantasy literature, I think we have specific like pop culture ideas about what fantasy literature is. So fantastic literature for me is anything that sort of pushes the boundaries of reality. Anything unreal would be fantastic. So Peter Pan in that way is fantastic, in the whole flying children, fairies, mermaids, pirates, alligators that have clocks inside of them. Like, it's that kind of fantastic children's literature. In both King's The Wasteland and J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan, we have this primary world space which follows the rules of our own world as readers, and we have a child figure drawn into the secondary world, the place that is out of time, where magic happens, where weird mythical creatures exist. It's a parallel that I find interesting. And this is where things get a little murky. If Peter Pan is the figure drawing Wendy into Neverland, because he doesn't want her to grow up, Peter Pan is a childish figure. He's the innocence that Wendy will lose when she stays in the real world and grows up. To flip that, Jake is the innocence, perhaps, of Roland. Roland is a weathered, sort of defeated man. Not defeated, but he's lost a lot. Roland has experienced a lot of trauma in the way that Jake, I don't think, has in his short lifetime. It seems to be sort of a reversal. Roland is pulling Jake to him because he needs that innocence, he needs that perspective, perhaps. Then there is the fact that Jake Chambers shares the initials JC with Jesus Christ. So we've already seen Jake has been sacrificed by this sort of father figure, Roland, who knows a lot more about this world. So the idea that Jake is this pure, innocent figure that can be sacrificed for the greater good. What does it mean to sacrifice that childhood innocence? That's something I've kind of been thinking through and making notes on. I don't 100% know where I'm going with this because I don't know where the story is going, but again, I thought it was worth noting. And if you have thoughts on the role of Jake and what Jake does in this book, I would love to discuss them further. Is Jake a sort of messianic figure? Is he childhood innocence? Is he the sacrificial lamb? Let's talk. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is texts and intertextuality and the magic leaking out and what that's doing. So I have this physical book. This is the physical book that I'm reading. This is a work of fiction. Within this fictional story, there is a fictional world, a fictional primary world, very much like my own. Jake, in that primary world, comes across a text, Charlie the Choo-Choo, and within this world, he reads that story about a fictional train that can talk. Later, when he's pulled into the secondary world with Roland, that text becomes important. They need to look for Charlie the Choo-Choo train, here called Blaine. The story is important within the story. My question is, or what does it mean, what does it do that I can physically hold a copy of the book that Jake himself holds? For me, it feels like the fiction is leaking out. Charlie the Choo-Choo was a fictitious text, but now it is a real text that is fiction. And so we have this leaking out of story, and I'm starting to wonder whether or not my approach is going to break down in the near future. There have been lines here and there that indicate perhaps that I will come face to face with the author and authority. Where's the line? I circled it big. So on page 196 in my copy of the text, so Jake is in that abandoned lot and weird stuff is happening, and quote, spray painted in the same red fading to pink was this puzzling sentence: he holds us all within his mind. And my question is, who holds you all within his mind? There are hints the author is going to force himself into my reading. And I would argue that the he in he holds us all within his mind is the author as he's writing this. Because again, one of the going back to the source text that influenced this piece, Robert Browning's Child Roll into the Dark Tower came. Many people read that poem as an exercise in writing. Like, the quest for the Dark Tower is the quest to write the poem. So if King's series is based on that poem, then is the quest for the Dark Tower the quest to write this series? And with Charlie the Choo-Choo leaking out into the real world and playing with what is fiction, what is reality, who has control over what, I'm wondering if at some point my approach is going to break down. Which, I mean, if I get to that point, that's fine. No spoilers, please. But I thought I would throw that out there. I'm seeing hints that my approach is going to break down, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this will be a piece of fantasy literature, or a piece of sort of genre-bending fantasy literature. And then again, maybe it will become a piece of literature that really asks me to think about what exactly is literature. And I think the idea that perhaps this quest is about the quest to write is also coming through in the influence of T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. I did do a little bit of a discussion on The Wasteland and how it's perhaps this idea of a branch continuing on. So T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland draws on the Arthurian legend of the Fisher King, which is a story about a man whose kingdom becomes barren because his loins are barren, and so he cannot propagate his line, and he fails as a man in medieval times because he cannot propagate his line. But then we see T.S. Eliot pick up on this narrative and carry it forward in a way that line has been propagated, that story passes on. So in a oddly hopeful way, when King picks up The Wasteland as an influence, this idea of despair and carrying forward stories and making a mark in history, I guess perhaps also gets carried on into The Wasteland if we want to start thinking about what exactly this text does. Chat with me in the comments down below. Please keep it spoiler free for the rest of the series because I do want to sort of experience this organically. Again, I'm just projecting and predicting sort of based on the things that I am seeing. Do follow me on Instagram, tag me in your photos, hashtag DTProject17. I think out of all the social medias, I basically fail at using Twitter and Tumblr, but I am on Instagram quite often. That's where I'm updating my readings, so check in with me there, share your photos, share your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.